Monday afternoon coaching update. Ohio State still needs to fill 3 coaching vacancies: offensive line coach, offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator. The national champs going through some coaching turnover with Ryan Day and the Buckeyes. That's Tim May, the 41-year vet. I'm Spencer Holbrook. No turnover here. Same two that you always get right here at LettermenRow.com, over at LettermenRow.com, and here on the Lettermen Row YouTube channel. Tim, the Buckeyes still need. We'll do some defensive coordinator stuff tomorrow. As for today, let's talk offensive coordinator and offensive line coach, just like we did yesterday on the Lettermen Row YouTube channel. But it's kind of settled in a little bit more that Chip Kelly is gone, that Justin Fry is gone. Both of those defections to the NFL. It's not like on the defensive side.
Defection? I think that's a little harsh.
Well, I guess I was just saying absences. There we go.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That I guess that was used as a pejorative, but it was lack of better term. Defections. They've left and gone to the NFL, whereas Jim Knowles left to a lateral job there, going to Penn State from Ohio State.
That's more like a defection when you go from one school to another school in your same conference, et cetera. So go ahead.
Yeah, Justin Fry, he's, I guess you could say, job upgrade to the NFL offensive line coaching job. He doesn't have to recruit anymore. I'm sure that's a feather in his cap with young kids and things like that. Of his own. So he can spend more time with his family, I'm sure. And then Chip Kelly, obviously the $6 million man in the NFL, resets the coordinator market in the NFL in a big way, going to the I keep wanting to say Oakland Raiders, Tim. I grew up with the Oakland Raiders. They're the Las Vegas Raiders now. But the bottom line is we don't cover that side of it. We cover the Ohio State side of it. And the Buckeyes need an offensive line coach and an offensive coordinator. Names starting to float out, names starting to come about. There's a lot to know here. There's a lot still unknown here. Tim, as you start to get a sense of where the Buckeyes are looking, are turning over some stones to find their offensive coordinator, their offensive line coach, what are your thoughts right now as of Monday afternoon?
Well, my thoughts are what we talked about a little bit yesterday, is that I don't think the Brian Hartline idea is far-fetched at all. And
no.
I mean, he was, in essence, co-offensive coordinator, the last 2 years. And Chip Kelly raved about his relationship with Brian, raved about the ideas that Brian brought to the fore. We all know that when Ryan Day first toyed with the idea of stepping back and becoming just a full head coach, Brian Hartline was his pick to succeed him. And that's the way I looked at it, succeed him as the real true offensive coordinator, the guy who's calling plays and stuff. And for whatever reason, that didn't work out. Ryan didn't feel as comfortable about it in 2023 and opted to step back in there. And then he went with the tried and true, which was Chip Kelly. Remember how much we asked Ryan Day and Brian Hartline about calling plays and blah, blah, blah in spring of 2023. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if we're doing exactly the same thing this spring, except that Brian Hartline now has two more years under him as a college coach. And I think he's quite capable of it. And I wouldn't be surprised to see what we saw, was it 3 years ago? Anyway, I wouldn't be surprised to see Kevin Wilson and Brian Hartline on the same staff again, for example. And it depends on where you want to put your eggs. When I look at what's going on here, Ryan has 3 big openings on his staff. The 3 most important openings you can have on a college football coaching staff are offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and offensive line coach, because the offensive line coach is so key to how good your offense turns out to be. And it also helps your defense when you've got a great offensive line. Yeah, if you follow my drift there, folks who know football understand what I'm talking about, like I know football. No, but I mean, So it's all these are part and parcel. And I think in descending order, I think it's more important to identify, in my opinion, your defensive coordinator maybe first, because we all know Ryan Day has it in his DNA to be very much involved with the offense again, if he has to be. I mean, let's face it, there's some pressure off his shoulders now from the standpoint of having won that national championship. But this is what's funny. Not funny, odd, queer, whatever you want to call it, is Chip Kelly's getting $6 million now to be the offensive coordinator of the Las Vegas Raiders. Justin Fry is now the offensive line coach of the Arizona Cardinals. Man, how much a difference 4 games made in the playoffs. Because coming out of that Michigan game, I'm not sure what either one of these guys were worth in terms of public scrutiny, in terms of the NFL and stuff. But what a run they made in the playoffs together, and it's paid off handsomely for them. That's why, as I said all day yesterday, you got to strike while the iron's hot, and the iron definitely is much hotter for them since January 20th than it was coming out of November 30th. With that said, I wouldn't be surprised to see Brian Hartline be named the offensive coordinator because Ryan Day has done it before. And I don't know what you think about that. I mean, I wouldn't say you poo-pooed that idea with me yesterday, but you kind of looked askance a little bit when I said it, because obviously there are quite a few names we can go through here who I think could bring pollen to the flower when it comes to bringing new thoughts, ideas, whatever you want to call it, to the Ohio State offense. And if you're Ryan Day, you want that as much as anything else. Bring some new ideas in. Let's see how they fit in the Ohio State offense.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Day's hired, honestly, quite a few offensive coordinators now. He hired Mike Yurcich. People forget about that for the 2019 season. He hired Mike Yurcich. He's had Kevin Wilson as an offensive coordinator. He's had Chip Kelly as an offensive coordinator. There was a very, very short window where he had Bill O'Brien as the offensive coordinator here. For 1 year, he had Brian Hartline as the offensive coordinator and didn't give up play calling there. I'm not sure. I don't poo-poo the idea of Brian Hart, to use your vernacular, Tim. I don't poo-poo the idea of.
Do I say poo-poo? I guess I do, don't I?
The idea of Brian Hartline as the offensive coordinator. I just wonder if he has shown Ryan Day enough for Ryan Day to give him the play sheet, because he didn't show enough in 2023. And then Ryan Day chose to spend an exorbitant amount of money in 2024 to go get an offensive coordinator to call plays when he wanted to give it up, instead of handing that play sheet to Hartline. So that's 2 straight years where that move could have already been made. And instead, it wasn't. And so is it time for him to do that? Is Hartline ready for that? I think that's something that Ryan Day has to question. It's also, though, Tim, with losing Chip Kelly, and I think something that we maybe lost sight of because we were just reacting to Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator, Ohio State now not only doesn't have an offensive coordinator, it doesn't have a quarterback's coach. And Ryan Day can't be the quarterback's coach. He never has been. He was under Urban Meyer, but once he got the head coaching job, he hired a quarterback's coach because he knew that he couldn't be the full-time quarterback's coach.
But he worked with quarterbacks a lot.
Yes, and I understand that, but Corey Dennis was his quarterback's coach, so he could manage the room when Ryan Day was doing other things. Even this year, when Ryan Day became a CEO, more of a CEO, as we like to say, he had Chip Kelly and Billy Fessler in the room handling the quarterbacks. Now, if Brian Hartline is promoted, I think the next step would be Billy Fessler as the quarterback's coach. That's something that is not a foreign concept, and it's not something that I think should be taken off the table at all. I just question whether, if Hartline does get that promotion back to offensive coordinator, will he call plays or will Ryan Day take the play sheet back? I don't know. Now, I know if Ryan Day goes out and makes an outside hire, that Ryan Day will not call plays because he would go find a coordinator that he trusts to call plays. So if you see an internal hire made, I think there's still a question of whether Ryan Day will call plays again or not. If you see an external hire made, I don't think that's a question at all. And I think that Ohio State will give the play calling duties to whoever they choose to hire, whether that's, and I think there are a bevy of names that we could get into, but we listed some names yesterday. If you want names, go to lettermenrow.com. There's a list there. I just think if it's external hire, Day's not calling plays. If it's an internal hire and Hartline and promoting Fessler, I think it's almost guaranteed that you're going to have to question whether Ryan Day's calling plays or Hartline is calling plays. Is that fair?
That's very fair. And the other thing to watch here, for watching, the white smoke coming out of the chimney or whatever we're paying attention to, is which side of the ball does Ryan Day go to hire somebody from outside? And if he goes to both, then you would think if the new offensive coordinator doesn't have offensive line in his resume like Kevin Wilson does, You know, I think Kevin Wilson brought a lot of good ideas to the offensive line as much as he did. You know, I mean, I know he was tight end. He was tight ends coach, but he was part and parcel to a lot of what they did on the offensive line. I mean, what I'm getting to here is if you uh, if you go out of the staff and hire an offensive coordinator from off the reservation, so to speak, then it would mean you probably would stay within the house to hire your defensive coordinator, is the way I'm looking at it. Because they're, like I've said, I like Tim Walton and Matt Guerrieri in the sense of I don't think you're too young to be something if, in fact, you've proven yourself to your boss, which is Ryan Day. Ryan Day went out of his way to heap praise on Matt Guerrieri. And by the way, we got to remember Matt Guerrieri was coaching Caleb Downs and Lathan Ransom. You know,
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of like heaping praise on Jesse Owens' track coach. You know, to a certain extent, way back when. But evidently, he impressed Ryan. You know, and I thought that was kind of laying the groundwork for what we might hear down the coming down the pike. But I don't put any credence into how much time has gone between Jim Knowles officially leaving and a naming of a successor to him. But if you leave you could combine Tim Walton and Matt Guerrieri into the defensive coordinator position somehow, some way. You got James Laurinaitis, who we all know is a budding star based on every criteria. He's a budding star in the profession, but he's only been in the profession as a full-time linebackers coach for 1 year? I mean, a year and a half. And so that, that's still some things to be learned from that regard. Larry Johnson is the GOAT. And so you would still have your same defensive staff, except for the coordinators now at Penn State, but you would have two guys combining maybe on being the coordinator. That's worked in some places. That's worked before. Offensively, that's where you're really waiting to see what comes down because, like I said, the young man who went to UNLV, Mike Salini. So I say that right? I always mispronounce it. I always call him Mike.
You said it correctly.
Yeah, but I always call him Mike. That guy, I thought he was very effective. I think the players liked him. He was here for 3 years? I'm trying to remember when he first showed up, but he's clearly got some chops. And so Dan Mullen hired him as his offensive line coach. No question. Well, questions asked, of course. But the bottom line is, I think Ryan could go all kinds of ways in this, and he could stay in house for almost everything if he wanted to, with the exception of bringing in an offensive line coach. And so, if Kevin is interested, I would think they've probably already had a conversation. He and Ryan have, because I think Ryan liked Kevin. Don't you? Didn't you get that drift?
Yeah, I just don't think that he's going to be the next offensive line coach.
Right. I'm just saying. He could be the next offensive coordinator. Who knows, right? I mean, the guy you like is, when you look at the names out there. I mean, for example, when you look at the offensive coordinator thing, I mean, some guy could come out of the not weeds really. I mean, but you look at the resume of like Jeff Nixon at Syracuse, right? I mean, he worked with Ryan before, and on one of Chip Kelly's NFL staffs. So there are guys out there who have proven to be quite capable and are proven to be pretty good play callers. They could go a route like that. So we're really sitting here talking about a lot of things, but it's really, what is Ryan truly thinking? I'm not sure he's showing his hand at this point.
Yeah, it's been pretty quiet, Tim. I mean, to be honest,
but I wouldn't be. I mean, if you want my opinion, I think Brian Hartline is still a possibility as an offensive coordinator, fully fledged offensive coordinator. That's just my thought. Go ahead now. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, if he wasn't getting considered, I think it would be a problem for Ohio State. I think he deserves to be at least considered. But again, Ryan Day has now seen the other side of that. He went outside and hired Chip Kelly. I know it's not really an outside hire because of how close Ryan and Chip are, but Chip had no ties to Ohio State whatsoever, other than being from the same hometown as Ryan and him being Ryan's mentor. So, like, he had ties to Ryan Day. He didn't have ties to Ohio State. It's still an outside hire. And it allowed Ryan Day to give up the play calling duties. And what happened? They won a national championship. So, that's not lost on me. So, yeah. I mean, I think that's something definitely to consider. So, if I was placing something on it right now, I think it's more than likely that you could get a Brian Hartline, Billy Fessler offensive coaching staff.
Yeah.
With an outside hire on the offensive line. I'm talking a big name hire. I'm talking like and I don't want to, I know these kind of videos can get aggregated sometimes. It's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying like a big time offensive line hire, like somebody from the NFL or like Matt Luke at Clemson or a Joe Rudolph at Notre Dame, who's a widely respected offensive line coach, recruits really well. And really, if you want a comparison to what Justin Fry had to do in the last 4 games of the season with all the injuries that Ohio State had on the offensive line, look no further than South Bend, where they had even more injuries on their offensive line and made it to the national championship game, and they recruited at a high level. So, like, if I had to guess, the outside hires, I think it's more likely that there's an offensive line coach outside hire than there is an offensive coordinator outside hire. But again, Ryan Day talked on the Joel Klatt show, and he said they're going to do their due diligence. Today he did. And I believe him because there are a lot of people who cover this team, Tim. And there are a lot of people around the Ohio State media sphere, things like that. We respect the work that they all do because, we know them all. There's a lot of us. And the fact that there's not a lot of chatter right now just shows everybody in the fan base in college football how quiet and reserved Ryan Day and the Buckeyes are being in this search. And maybe they do promote from within, but they're definitely doing their due diligence and making sure that they're getting the right guys in these positions.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I talked about this on the radio again this morning is, Ryan is working with house money here. And I don't mean that NIL wise or salary wise, but, this isn't as critical a moment in Ohio State football history, in the Ryan Day era history, as this time a year ago was. You follow my drift? From the standpoint of you definitely want to get it right, but you don't want to be rushed into something. Like, I'm just throwing the Brian Hartline, Billy Fessler idea out there because I think that would work, and if you thought Brian Hartline was capable 2 years ago, then why wouldn't that maybe have been enhanced over the last 2 years, is all I'm looking at. I'm just looking at history and reading those kind of cards. The bottom line is Ryan knows this. This isn't experimentation. You don't want to necessarily go into experimental mode here for the fun of it. He knows he owes it to the guys they've recruited and or gotten from the transfer portal to get this as right as possible. He has an obligation to the players involved to get this as right as possible because they're as curious about this as we are, probably more so, especially in this transfer portal era. You almost have to get it right to have any kind of continuity from the standpoint of players and believing in the guys you're bringing in, et cetera. So that's just basic 101. But I think Ryan is so much more capable of getting this right than he was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. We talked about that on an earlier show. So I think he's grizzled, but I also think he understands the responsibility he has to the players to get this one right, because this is a rebuilding year. But it's when I was talking about a while ago, which one would I hire first? I would maybe look at the defensive side only because I think it's to get that picture clear in some people's minds might be more important than the offensive side, because when he hired Jim Knowles came in and changed a lot of stuff. I mean, this is the Ohio State offense. He's not hiring somebody to bring in, the West Coast offense or the run and shoot or the wishbone. And he's looking for somebody to enhance the already standing Ohio State offense. And with that said, you're going to have a probable redshirt freshman quarterback starting for you this year. It's important to get that straight on who's working with whom. Although, I think Billy Fessler's still around, so he would be working with the quarterbacks right now as we speak. Like Will Howard spoke glowingly of him. You know what I mean? From his standpoint, we saw how that quarterback got better as the year went on last year, with the exception of getting the head bump against in the Michigan game, how well he played in the playoffs. So I think they've got guys in-house to carry on the tradition they want to do offensively and maybe enhance it. But that's just my opinion. But it's important at the most critical position on the football team, quarterback, that there be some kind of stability shown there sooner, maybe rather than later also.
Yeah, I think it's like a week. I think we're looking at like a week of this.
Get recruiting done.
The recruiting is now in a dead period. And so they've got the opportunity now. Yeah, but they've got
whatever you want to call it.
They've got the opportunity now to go all hands on deck in the hiring process now that they're not on the road recruiting, and they're not, like last week, some of them were in Georgia and some of them were in California and a couple were in Florida and Texas. And it's like, okay, let's get everybody together and figure out how we're going to do this and how we're going to construct this staff, because this is a pretty critical staff for Ryan Day, because it's not chasing a championship anymore, Tim. And I know you said there's some, he has bought himself some time now and afforded himself the luxury of being a national championship winning head coach who gets some of the leeway, I guess, to make those decisions with that cachet, I guess, that you have as a national champion. But it's also going from chasing a championship to sustaining. And that's even more difficult at a lot of places, especially at a place like Ohio State, than, chasing, because you're always chasing a championship at Ohio State. Sustaining that long term is far more difficult, especially because you just keep losing coaches. We saw Nick Saban. It's not that he won so many championships. It's that he won so many championships and he never did it with the same coaches, because every single year there was turnover. And I think that's what makes him the greatest of all time, is the sustainability of his programs. Ryan Day now has the challenge of sustaining success. They finally found success in the run game that wasn't working when he was calling plays. Chip Kelly brought a new run system in and it worked. They've got to be able to sustain that while also keeping the passing attack going, while also keeping this defense, now that it's humming post-Kerry Combs era. It's all about sustaining. And that's why I think these three hires are so critical for Ryan Day. Thrown into all of that mix is you not only lost your offensive coordinator, but underlying storyline of that is you lost your quarterback's coach as well. So I think that's something to keep in mind as well. We're going to have it all covered over at lettermenrow.com. I know we will. Tim May is the best in the business, the 41-year vet. He's going to keep talking about Ohio State here on the Lettermen Row YouTube channel. Make sure to like the video, subscribe below, then come over to lettermenrow.com. $1 for your first 7 days. That's right, $1 for your first 7 days. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys over at lettermenrow.com. We'll probably see you guys on Tuesday for another breakdown of the Buckeyes coaching search.